Welcome again to Banter. I'm old.
I'm bald.
You know what? Have you shaved again recently? Has it been a while? Because you're getting a little.
I gotta tell you, that's most of the time it's angle because I got some side hair. Tell you that much.
There is
I
a
got
little.
side hair.
Look at that.
Can you go at this angle? Yeah, that's perfect.
Gone. Now it's all. It's
Yep.
sheen.
I gotta keep my head up like this. And you can't tell.
Uh, so this week, we've been away for a couple of weeks now. We did the fine episode with Miss Jessica Smith, and now it's just the two of us once again. And so we decided, since we've had some space, we're going to talk about some space.
Wow. Wow. We did not plan that. You do not approve that. Wow.
That's great. All right.
Also, it's nice that now we're going to be talking about something that like we'll both be like completely speculating wildly on everything that we're saying because I'll be honest, Jess is a little too smart for this show. And
I
like
know.
she is fun and playful, but she was on her like big brain game when she was on here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're experts at exactly
Nothing.
nothing. And that's what makes it fun. Is that, we think we know some things about some stuff. But we don't know a lot about really anything. It's okay.
Quick fun fact for the audience. We like to do vocal warm-ups before we start, right? So I was doing my vocal warm-up, doing a little tongue twister. So I threw out the old "She sells seashells by the seashore." And it reminded me, and credit to whoever came up with this tweet, but I saw the tweet. And it said, in hindsight, that was the worst place for her to be selling seashells.
That's true.
I almost don't want to use it now.
I never thought of that. Why would she sell those there?
Yeah, it's kind of a waste,
But there's a lot of those like that, right? Like, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Well, of course a woodchuck can chuck wood. He's a woodchuck.
Yeah, I've seen that Geico commercial.
Yeah, of course.
This is kind of, I'm on a quick side note immediately, but this goes more with our idioms episode probably. Someone else just told me, like, I don't know, you consider it like a nursery rhyme or whatever. It's like a whole thing. Like, this little piggy went to the market.
Yeah.
Like this. Yeah. So, first of all, found out that was just a thing in the United States, by the way, in case you didn't know. And in my head, as a child, the first time you hear that, you think, this little piggy went to the market. He's going to the store. No, it's the meat market. That's way worse. And I did not think of that. And like a week ago, someone was like, hey, did you ever realize this? And then I was just like, oh my God. It's pretty dark.
What is dark? I think we're going to have to do another idioms one because there's so many out there. And I think that was the people need another idioms episode. So at some point down the road, we're going to have to do that.
How about this? If we get 3 likes on this episode, we will do another idioms episode. I know that's a lot, but really only need 2 because I'm expecting one from Mojo Jojo out there.
He's definitely our top fan.
Yeah.
I think. We have a few. I think your dad frequents the show. I think he likes to catch up. He likes to binge watch.
Yeah. Hi, Dad. He'll probably see that. Hopefully he'll say hi in the comments.
Uh-huh. So you get the rant of the week before we go too much further here. Your turn. I know nothing about what you're going to talk about. Sometimes I get a little feel for it. I have no idea. So you know what? Take your 5 minutes.
All right. Well, luckily I always have a rant, like, in the pipe. So this one is probably going to be kind of fragmented, but I'm just going to say generally, like, high schools is the rant. Okay. Now, insert like the very stereotypical like infomercial guy just being like, there's gotta be a better way. Because like since leaving high school, I have like not ridden on a yellow school bus, but I've noticed like how like awful they are and just like how old and like decrepit most of them are. And it's funny, we had a German exchange student when I was in high school, and he rode on the school bus with us to school. And the first thing he said when he saw the school bus was, "Oh my God, that's what we're taking? It's so old." I didn't even think of it. But yeah, yellow school buses are all like pretty disgusting and old. So it's like, why is that like the stand? I guess the standard probably just because it's cheap, but like, man, we got to do better at some point. And like, you know, this rant isn't going to become a political argument about like, funding education and like, all those kinds of things, because that's a whole nother rabbit hole that I also know nothing about. But I have been back in a high school since graduating high school, and I gotta tell you, it's not the same as you remember. Everything is just really bare and like depressing looking. Like walls lined with lockers. It's just like, oh my God. It's just really sad and like cold and like just like felt like just cinder blocks everywhere. When like you're on a college campus and like they like dress it up like, hey, we want you to be here. Come hang out, blah, blah, blah. Now, obviously you pay a lot of money to go to college, generally speaking. So like that's where a lot of that comes from. But like, gosh, like I wonder what we're missing out on in terms of like creativity and efficiency, just because like there aren't like high school kids who are like in an environment that's like inviting. Like a cinder block classroom with like a hang in there poster on it. I don't know if that's doing it for most people. But I don't know. If you haven't been like back in a high school since you graduated high school, like I would recommend it just for like this shock value of like, oh my God, I spent every day here and I made it out. That's incredible. So that's my rant. High school is like, gotta find a way to do better, even if it's just like little aesthetic things. It's rough in there.
Okay. Moving on. I do like the, I think you're right, generally speaking. Like the yellow school bus thing is kind of, and there's, so in cities, in large cities, and you're familiar, right? Chicago area, kids, they don't even have school buses in some bigger cities. Like you just ride whatever the public transportation is, or you take a cab or what, whatever to go to school, you walk to school. It's usually taking buses or taking the train or whatever it is to get to school. And that's just what you do. You don't have like, you don't take the regular yellow school bus. But it does seem odd that like how terrible they are. You're just like, there's got to be something that it's literally like they just took like a trailer and like, let's put the most uncomfortable seats in this trailer that we can and stuff as many people in it as we can. And you're just like, what? It's not safe. You like, I think now they have seatbelts, right? Or do they? I haven't been on a yellow.
I think they always had seatbelts when I was there, but like they were always like stuffed in between like the
Yeah,
back
nobody wears
of the
one.
seat, and was there one? Who knows? Like I don't know.
None of those things like crash, and they wonder why like every kid in there gets injured or whatever. It's because and they're just running around from place to place, and
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. Well, kids are a nightmare, but aside from that, like I think about I'm just gonna kind of continue this. I can't quite bracket it yet, but like since traveling for athletics in college, you have your nice coach buses, and then like you've got your horrible yellow school buses. Why is there no
there's nothing in between.
middle tier option?
Nothing. Yeah, makes no sense. There's got to be something that's like similar to the coach buses, right? You can have the same comfy seats, but it doesn't have to have electrical outlets. It doesn't have to have TVs on it. It doesn't have to have nice cubbies. It doesn't have to have a bathroom.
Like, doesn't have to have the whole like storage area underneath. It can be like
cut all that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
maybe this is $1 trillion idea. I know nothing about mechanics or engineering, but I feel like I could build a nice mid-tier school bus to start selling to suburban schools.
But the mid-tier is basically what you see in terms of just like public transportation buses, right? That's because they have their own seat. They have storage, but it's within it. Like it's usually above you or underneath you, like directly underneath you. That would make the most sense, and it's public transit, so it's paid for through tax dollars anyway. So it's got to be the same kind of thing. You would think.
Kind of like a school bus, yeah.
You wonder if it's a maintenance thing. I wonder if it's easier to maintain the yellow school bus than it is like, I don't know. Let's save this for another episode.
Put a pin in it.
We could talk schools. We could talk public education. That would be.
Oh my God, that would be a great episode because we would really like. That's an actual issue that we know nothing about.
Yeah. That could be fun. Okay. So space. This one's big, quite literally. Humongous. And I think that's, for me, the starting point, right? Is the vastness, the ridiculous vastness of space and how it's one of those things that you can't like fully grasp the definition of how big it is. Like that is what like blows my mind. Like you can't tell somebody how big space. Okay, scientists could, but I'm not a scientist, right? But even when they
Who listens to those clowns?
Like I can't imagine in my own mind. I can't imagine what a million miles is. Like what's a million miles of something or of distance? I can't fathom that. That's a million of anything is a huge number. And I don't think people understand how big that is. But to imagine like quadrillions of galaxies and that like the universe is in space is just like that bad. It just like my mind. Can't.
Yeah, it's I heard semi recently like someone's definition of the universe, not to mean like, you know, all encompassing necessarily, but like the universe is more commonly being used to define like the area of space that we can see because we just assume that it goes so far beyond what we'll ever be able to observe that like there's no point in even considering that a part of our universe.
Yeah. And then you go into the deeper rabbit hole of essentially where that whole idea of rabbit hole comes from is like multiverses, right? And that beyond just our universe that we're in is an infinite number of other universes that expands from that. I actually
do you believe in that?
I do. I that's a whole quantum mechanics type thing that's pretty wild to think about. But I had this conversation with Jess, funny enough, when we were in the office, getting ready to leave, that this one's gonna okay. And you might think it's a little bit wild, but I said to her that there are infinite number of universes where there are an infinite number of answers to the same question. And they're all infinitely right and infinitely wrong. So I know that sounds crazy, right?
And I think I walked in towards the trail end of this because I walked in the office, I heard you say Schrodinger's cat, and then I walked out and I was like, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
So that's the concept of Schrodinger's cat, of the whole, like, it's both alive and dead at the same time, but you don't actually know. So it's kind of the same concept. You don't know until you open the box, right? That's that idea of space, and I think that's hard for us to grasp and understand. So I'll try to expand on that a little bit and just try to drop to a different like level of thinking. And I don't know if we talked about this in a previous episode, but we talked about it before.
You're gonna have to expand on that infinitely.
Ooh, I can do that. Well, maybe not. Maybe not today. I think we've had this conversation before, but I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson explain nothing. Did we have this conversation before?
Oh yeah, we did. The concept of nothing.
Have we done it on the show before? I don't know if
not on the show. We were on the track when we were talking about this.
This is wild. So we'll watch it. There's actually a YouTube video where he tries to explain nothing. And because they started with space. So they were like, okay, so space is nothing. And they're like, well, no, because it's full of gases and stars and planets and matter and all these things. So, but then you like condense it down, and I'm not going to get this right. So you have to watch the video on your own. Like, get rid of all the planets, all the stars, all the matter. And there's still space. There's still air. There's still, so, okay, let's get rid of all the air. You're in a vacuum now, but there's still space. There's still something there. So you can't call that something nothing.
Just the fact that an area exists in which there's nothing inside the area itself is the thing.
Is the thing. He said, so there's in reality, there's no such, it's because even you break it down to atoms, there's still space between the atoms. He said you couldn't get small enough or big enough for there to be nothing, which is like kind of the whole idea behind space, if you think about it, right? It's infinite everything and infinite nothing at the same time, which is just like,
and like the concept of nothing, I feel like is what's most terrifying to people about space and the afterlife and all of these things. Is like, if you think about nothing in those terms and there is no nothing, then like, what are we so worried about? Now, like a rational person could like obviously argue like, okay, I'm not actually arguing against nothing. I'm arguing what happens to me in the event of me not existing. But still, it's just like we're so concerned about like the unknown and like, what, like I think a lot about space in terms of like religion and the idea of like a creator. And I think that's what a lot of people look at it as. Like, if there's this infinity, then like, how is that possible unless it was created by something? And that's where a lot of basis of religion is things that we don't yet understand. So that was kind of a rambly way of me saying that, like, what I think of when I think of nothing.
well, it made me think of something that you were just talking about in regards to that I don't remember who said this or where I'd heard this before, that one of the ways to remember how important you are within the concept of everything in space and whatever in the universe is that it's all connected. So there's the whole like, you are part of you is a star, was from a dying star, because all matter, like carbon, life based, like we're carbon based life forms, so is a star. So like you're interconnected with that concept. And so and I think that's kind of the whole premise way back with the whole Big Bang idea, Big Bang concept and theory, is that it started from nothing, and then everything that started at that one time, like we all derive from that thing, whatever it is. But again, there's no nothing, so I don't know, we could go further.
Well, that's the thing, is like, we always look at the Big Bang as like the start, but in my head I'm like, why couldn't there have been something before that? Like, that's the starting point of our known universe. But like, in my head, it's like, if there's no such thing as nothing, which like logically makes no sense, then like the Big Bang is just another event along the way of infinity.
I agree. I'm on the same page with you. Like, I think, I don't think there could be this like start to life, but to think that there was nothing is hard to imagine.
And here's the other thing too, which brings me back to the concept of a creator, is a lot of the things that like I subscribe, like not understanding to, is if there was a divine creator, why would our like physical brains and all of their limitations be able to ever fathom like the nature of the laws of physics as they pertain to creating the universe? Because we're trying to unlock those secrets, and by we I mean not us, I mean like smart people, and I mean like they're trying to unlock how is the universe created, what's going on way out there where we can't see, and like hundreds of light years away, what's going on. And like what if our brains just like can't possibly comprehend the answer, even if it was staring us right in the face? And I think that's like the idea of a creator that seems most likely to me is like, if we try to subscribe like very finite physical rules to infinity, then it's always going to come back messed up.
Yeah. So, so on that point, I think that's what we as humans do to begin with is we can't fathom it. We can't. So we try to bring it and hone it in so I don't understand it. So I'm going to, put together these pieces that I do understand to help me to cope with it. Right. And in reality, and I am a Christian, so I'm gonna admit that here on the show, like I am, but I also understand the way that the human psyche works and how the brain works. By no means am I an expert in that area,
or anything,
but we create things, like religion as a terminology or as a way of coping with life, coping with death, and coping with the unknown. Like those things that we can't like process and figure out, we say, well, it's divine. Like we don't know why, we're not supposed to know why. And it's just that we don't know how to comprehend it, so that we just try to tie it to this thing that's like bigger than us because we can't figure it out ourselves. So, and then we call it, we call it Buddha, we call it God, we call it, whatever it happens to be. And that's our way of coping with our not understanding of the thing.
And I wonder, we can go down this path for a little bit, but what do you think about extraterrestrial life? Is it out there? A, and have they been here? B.
100% on both. Yes, on both questions. My wife and I actually were discussing this at the dinner table because I told her what the episode was going to be about, what we were going to talk about. I said, "Hey, do you have any insights?" Because she's always curious about what we're going to say. And she said, she's like, there has to be, like, just from what we were talking about before, in the infinite vastness of space and how it's constantly growing too. I mean, that's what scientists say, is that it's constantly expanding and growing. But to imagine that we're just one solar system in the universe of, I don't know, billions, trillions, quadrillions. I don't even remember what the current number is of other galaxies and solar systems. To be selfish and to think that, hey, we're the only living beings on one singular planet in the whole universe, that's not realistic to say, I don't think. And I think they've been here before. And the reason I believe that is because I think there's some things that, in terms of our own advancements as a people, some things you just see throughout history have like evolved incredibly quickly. And you're like, without some sort of divine intervention, whether that's divinity from a religious being or from an actual being, right? Like a physical, I think it's real. I think that's how you get inspiration, how you see things. And I think they've been here. I don't know that they're all like, these big-eyed green, aliens that you see on TV or anything like that. But there's always these stories. So like even back before TV and newspapers and all those kinds of things, you would have tribes in different parts of the world that documented what they had seen or heard or whatever, and they try to explain it because they don't understand it, and so they make it. And they were so similar that it was odd, it was eerie, right? That they had seen the same thing. And it could be that maybe they just traveled a long way and somebody told a story or whatever, and it expanded. The whole telephone thing. Like, hey, I saw this flashing light in the sky and it was all green and weird flashes and stuff. And then you come find out it's like Aurora Borealis. And that's what it is. But they thought it was aliens. So it's like, I don't know where I was going with that necessarily, but I do believe that they exist. Like, I think it's ridiculous to think that aliens don't exist. And I think that we wrap our minds around do they have to breathe oxygen? Do they have to like have water to live? And that's our own physical being. We know that we have to have those things. But shoot, there's probably a species out there that like carbon monoxide is like what they have to survive, right? They have to have it inside them. So like,
I mean, in the scope of infinity, like naturally that would have to exist. Like there would
yeah,
have to be a situation where that happened. But like when I like, and you just made me think of this right now. But like when you talk about an infinite universe, then I agree there's got to be something else out there, right? But I will also say that like the multiverse theory in my head, as I'm saying it right now, I'm thinking of it in a different light where it's like, is there like this alternate reality where that's happening? That's always the way I used to think of it. But now I'm thinking of more of like, if the universe truly is infinite, then there is physical like distance between me and an alternate version of myself. Because if it is infinite, then that means that the conditions that like what's the word I'm looking for? The conditions that came before me could be recreated in another solar system
yep.
somewhere else. So I don't know why I'm not thinking of this before, and it's probably pretty obvious to a lot of people. But I always thought of it as like alternate realities stacked on top of each other. But now I'm thinking more of like, no, somewhere like if you went that way for hundreds of quadrillions of light years, you could find another me doing this, but slightly differently or the
Yeah.
exact same.
And if it's infinite, then you know, hundreds of quadrillions of light years away from that person is another Jack that's doing the same
Right. So
thing
I guess it
differently.
is
Mhm.
technically like a different reality because it's so unobtainable in terms of like, are we ever going to be able to observe that or get there? I probably would just consider it another reality just for that reason.
When I think that that's the thing that also is just like hard to fathom is being able to travel that distance is one thing, right? Because right now with the way that we have in terms of technology and whatever it is to travel through space, it would take like we'd never be able to get there. They'd be dead or we'd be dead by the time we got there. There's just no, and even like advances in technology you talk about, like there's just that's hard to fathom, like even getting to that point. So there's a new, I guess it's not new, it's in the last few years, there was a new Star Trek series. I think it's called Discovery, where they had found this being that was able to essentially jump from one point in space to another point in space, kind of like a wormhole or whatever. You'd just kind of move from one space to another part in space, anywhere you wanted to go. But it always made me think like that would mean you could go anywhere you wanted to go, but how do you know where to go if you've never been there, especially in space, right? So you think of like Earth as a planet, right? We've mapped the Earth. We know, most of what's on the Earth. There are a lot of places that we probably haven't been to, certain.
A lot of the terrestrial Earth, yeah.
Yeah. So, but we can put into a GPS, like I want to go from this spot to this spot or whatever. We can find a place and we can get there. But like in space, how do you navigate to a new place that you've never been before? I mean, it's by stars and things like that, I assume, but like that part also is what I don't quite grasp. I don't understand how that happens. And beyond that is the other aspect that kind of came from that show and many others. I don't know how true this is, but it's not just one axis, right? It's not like you're going, straight and back and left and right or whatever. You're going the Z axis of space. So space doesn't just go this way. And I think that's what people don't quite grasp also is like you see these pictures of the solar system and it's like this flat disk that has the planets rotating around it. There's maybe a little bit of movement in between those and the sun, but like there's also this Z axis that goes this way. So like,
And that's what confuses me about, and a lot of what we know about space is just like things that we saw in movies and we assume are true. But in a lot of space movies, I don't know if you've noticed this, but like they use the terms like north, south, east, west in space movies, and I'm always just like, what? How is that helpful at all? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. What would, like, if someone was like, go north, I'd be like, isn't north like based on like magnetic poles on the Earth? How? I don't know.
I don't know how they do. Well, in some of the better films, they do talk about those axes, right? And so they'll talk about um, dropping out or whatever. Like, but it is still very confusing to understand. And I have probably somebody's watching this that's an astrophysicist, and they're like, these guys are a joke, man. They have no idea what that. But that's okay. But that's normal human beings because we're experts at exactly
nothing. And this show's not for astrophysicists.
If an astrophysicist is watching this show, you need to leave.
It's not for you. It's
not
for the
you.
common man.
Yeah, of course.
Or woman.
Wear my white T-shirt. Come on.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay. But I think that there is intelligent life out there. I think there's life, but I think beyond that, there's intelligent life, and I think there's life that's way more intelligent than we are. And I think there's intelligent life that if we're talking about infinite space, there's life that's more intelligent than us, and then there's life that's more intelligent than that, and so on and so forth. And so, which also begs the question: if they're all that intelligent, it's worked its way to a certain level, like what's that at right now? Like, what's the technology that's out there that we don't know even exists?
In which case, it's like, if there were aliens here, like they would be so advanced to the point where like we can't detect them, and it's like we will never, like, they would only be here among us if they were like, yeah, there's no chance, they don't have the stuff to figure out that we're here anyway. So like that's what I think is, like, if they're here, like they probably just like pop in and out, just be like, all right, well, will they ever figure out that we exist? It doesn't look like it at this point. And then we're none the wiser for it forever.
I agree with that, but I have two things to go with that. So one thing, I think they've been here for quite some time, over our history of our planet. But I think for one reason or another, could you imagine? So just imagine, like, I think it's been hidden by a lot of different governmental factions. I think that's the one conspiracy theory that I actually believe in, is that that's been hidden, and it makes sense why it would be. Because could you imagine if?
Did you just say that's the one conspiracy theory? I'm not even sure that's the only one you've talked about on this show.
Okay, well, it's the one I want to talk about right now.
The government is making people cut their hair, man. Keep your hair long, man.
Long, man. Anyway, so I think that, could you imagine if tomorrow, let's say as an example, let's say tomorrow, like 1,000 people in the town that we live in witness an alien just walking down the street, and it's verified. And like, could you imagine the kind of mass hysteria, chaos that would descend upon this area and then the rest of the United States, the rest of the world, if that was the case? I mean, that's just an alien. Like, imagine if it was something as simple as, like, let's not even think of an alien, let's think of like Bigfoot or something like that, right? If it was proven, like video evidence, people got blood samples, whatever it happens to be, and it was proven that existed, people lose their minds.
I think there would be people that lose their minds, but I think by and large, my new belief on things like that is that people would be like, oh, no way. And keep scrolling. because like, think about the whole, like, the pandemic happened, right? And then like the news is going to hell and everyone's losing their minds about that. And then like the government's like releases a statement about Area 51, like, yep, we did see UFOs. True. And we don't know what they are. And then everyone was just like, oh,
cool.
And then, anyway.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, and we were just like,
yep.
Like, we just like brushed over that a lot. Now I don't actually know what any of that stuff said. I didn't read it. But like, I feel like if we were going to make a big deal about something like that, like we would have made a big deal about that.
Well, I think there's a difference between somebody just say, "Oh yeah, we saw it. Yeah, it happened," and you actually seeing it, right? I think
Oh,
it,
sure, yeah.
and so like I think so. I think it's happening, and also if they really wanted us to know that they existed, that it would be pretty simple for them to do that, right? And make their presence known. But maybe part of it is they're just. I think that's the theory is that they're just trying to see how we're going to evolve, what we're like. They're testing us out to see what are we like as a species and all those kinds of things. And we're a mess. So
What is the term that people, I don't know like what in what field this is used, but like we're like considered a level one civilization or something. Like because we have like level one civilizations can access their entire planet and like
well,
communicate on all ends of the planet.
I've heard that too. So like we could communicate with each other, but then also like we would have a set structure as a species for communication, a set structure for community as a whole, and that's the problem. That's kind of the issue that we run into is that we have, all these different people from, human beings from all over the planet that speak different languages, that have a different currency, that have different, and and that's good, but at the same time, there's not as much commonality amongst us, and then we end up fighting amongst each other and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's been the struggle since we've expanded out to these different tribes and these different areas. And so Mandy brought that up, my wife, something in relation to that. She's like, you know, this was a kind of an interesting thing I hadn't really necessarily thought about. She's like, do you think the people that are trying to ask for funding for things like SpaceX or NASA or, whatever, to explore Mars or to find other planets or whatever, do space exploration? She's like, do you ever think they're like, our world kind of sucks, right? we, there's lots of hungry, you know, starving children, terrible healthcare, bad conditions for living on, for a large chunk of the world's population live in severe poverty and severe issues. And it was like, oh, let's throw several $billion to go to space. And I was like, never quite thought about it like that. But then I started to tie it together. I was like, well, we've kind of been doing that forever, right? Since our existence. We're like, oh, this place is boring. I want to go somewhere else. Like, I'm gonna go explore this place, see if this is any good. And then we kind of use up all this stuff at that place. We're like, I'm gonna move to a different place.
Well, isn't that kind of like always been one of NASA's greatest problems is like how much trouble they ever had getting funding because of the number of people who are like, why are we spending money on this when we have problems here? Like, let alone the whole like foreign policy argument of like, oh, why are we doing stuff over there when people in America aren't even, taken care of? But like that argument goes like tenfold for like, dude, why are we going to space if we can't even handle our own stuff? Now, do I think that's important to some level? Yes. But there's probably a balance. Like, could we take some of like the exploring space money and like rover money and maybe like funnel that into like low income neighborhoods? Maybe I don't know.
Well, and that's probably what you're talking about to begin with, is like the tier one, you know, being or whatever, is that we there's so many other things that we haven't quite figured out, but we just keep expanding our population so much. We don't know how to like slow that down or like actually do good things that can benefit all of humanity. I think we have a really hard time with that. And so then once you start to use up all the resources that you have and you can't find a way to control all those things, and actually like and especially in the US, like we've gotten to this point where it's just like gathering stuff and things, and got all these nice, we had that a little bit of that conversation about like the softness of America, where we've just kind of like, we've got all these great things and we just keep getting more great things, and we forgot what it means to fully have to like suffer, or have to like really, first world problems versus third world problems kind of stuff. And then since we get all comfy, then we don't do the hard stuff. We don't try to help other people. We don't, because we're just like, we're good. We're comfortable with what we got. So that expands to when you have that money and you're in that first world country, then you're like, well, what else? Where else can we go?
Mm-hmm.
Space, right? So because you're like, you want to get, you don't know how to get uncomfortable. So you're like, okay, uncomfortable would be space. I'm going to go do that.
Well, and then you think about someone like Elon Musk, who's going to start SpaceX, and it kind of makes you think there's no, like, he's not like on the ground, like seeing all the ways his money could like change people's lives necessarily. So like, I'm not going to like jump and say like, oh, he's a bad person because he's not using his money for a better reason. It's like, I don't know him. So like, I don't actually know what he's doing with his money. But like, for someone like him, it makes sense to me where you're like, I mean, I guess I'll try to go to space. And like, isn't Jeff Bezos also like, he left Amazon and now he's like Mr. Space Guy too. I think they're both.
That.
Yeah.
Huh.
Did you hear he left Amazon?
I didn't.
Yeah, he's not the CEO of Amazon anymore. And I think that he made a statement about like, yeah, he's putting his focus onto like, colonizing other places besides Earth. Because he's just like, yeah, I don't see like a future here beyond like 30, 40 years.
So again, now let's look at this. Let's look at this in terms of that type of policy and that concept in regards to, okay, you have money. So what's going to happen is it's what's happened throughout the course of history is the people that have money are going to be able to do that. The people that don't are going to be here. Right? It's the same thing we've always done. It's like, let's start this city, New York City. Let's colonize America, and let's start this massive city. So what are the worst areas in New York City? The oldest areas in New York City. Because that's what's happened, right? Is they come in and you create all this, let's create this big city and let's let all these things. And then we're going to start the rich people are going to start to get, there's too many people here. We're going to go, let's go find our own space and we go over here. So then they go buy their own land and then they start a new city and they do the same thing. It's the same exact concept that has happened over the course of history. And that was the most recent history, but you can go back to Rome and, Athens, Greece, and all those places. It's the same concept. And so then the poor people are just stuck because they can't afford to pick up and go somewhere, right? So it's the people that have the money that are like, let's go somewhere, let's go do. And I think it's cool. Like it would be really cool for me to go to Mars, go to the moon. Not going to happen for me.
I think it would be cool if you could come back. Like if you knew you could come back, it'd be cool to go. Yeah.
But even if it becomes a thing, I'd never be able to afford it. I'm a track coach. I don't make money. Not that kind of money, right? I think I was listening in it recently when they were talking to Elon Musk, and they were talking about like doing. That was when they were just talking about doing flights, like space flights, right? And it was like $250,000 for a ticket, and like I'm never gonna have $250,000 in my life. So I don't. That kind of stuff seems interesting to me. And so then it makes you think like, is that just what we do? Is we just explore when we get bored? So we're interested in space when we've kind of like got bored of what we have here?
Honestly, I think rich people, to them, yes. It's like, we're bored of what's going on here, so why not do that? But question, have you seen the footage of the rover that landed on Venus? I believe it's on Venus.
No, I haven't on Venus. I've just seen the one on Mars recently, but
there was one that they put on Venus, and they showed like footage of it, and it was like footage before the rover melted, because apparently it just like melted. But it was like weird, like not a lot of things I see on Twitter. Like I think like, wow, that's a moving picture, or like, wow, that was a really moving video or something or whatever. But like to me, it was in a way because I was just like it's kind of like it just is another place. Like it just looks like another place from that footage. And I'm just like we just think of it as like this abstract thing. It's just like, that's a planet. And then I'm just like, it's like a real place that looks kind of similar to things we have here. So like that, like, that's what like really like cemented in like my head. Like there's no way that there isn't another planet just like Earth, because like even this one right here kind of looks like it,
Mm-hmm. Well, and the one on Mars that they've been showing is they had a new one that has like a new, I don't know, 3D camera on it and all this stuff, and it has really crisp, clear images of the surface of Mars as it's been driving around and all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty cool. But it looks like when you're looking at it, you're like, well, this looks like an area of like southern Utah or Nevada. Like
right.
It looks like it's just dry and rocky, and like it could have been here. And then there's been a lot of that talk too, that it once was, because there's, they have evidence of, the ice caps and different channels that appear to have been flowing water and that kind of thing. And so,
and it's just like, it's like that, seeing that kind of thing is special in a way because it's not special. And then it's like, oh, we're not special. And like, when you see another planet in the movies, it's like, that's kind of just what another planet is, just another planet. And like, we subscribe so much meaning to like, oh, Mars this, Mars that, and then you see it and you're just like, or my reaction was just like, okay, well, that just looks like another place to me. So like how special is it just because it's our closest accessible neighbor, Now the moon is like weird looking, so like I get how like people can look at the moon and like it's just the moon, but like now that we've seen the surface of Mars, like that just looks like a place to me.
Yeah,
that sentence doesn't make a lot of sense probably if you were to read that sentence, but I'm hoping that like by listening to this, people are understanding what I'm trying to say, and like they're not like getting it, like putting on the closed captions. Like, is that even an automatic thing on YouTube? I don't know.
I have no
idea. If you read that would have made no sense.
Yeah, but I got you. I feel you. I feel you. I feel you cooking big skillet. You like all my things I say like that, right?
That's the truck one. What was the truck one?
What was the what one?
You said a truck one earlier.
What did I say? Keep on trucking, big pickup.
There it is.
Said that one today. Those are old man ones.
Impressive.
I know, right? I practice. I study. Stay up late nights. Anywho, I am interested to see what comes of it. Like if they are able to find any signs of really anything besides just a bunch of rocks, it'd be kind of cool. If it's anything, like, could you imagine? Wouldn't that be great? They're up there and they like find a Coors Light can or something. What the hell?
You're just like, who? All right, come on, guys. Who put this here?
There's a guy behind the camera and he's like, throws it away, runs away.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's filmed in a Hollywood basement.
Wouldn't it be crazy? Would it be totally unfathomable for something like that to happen? Like it's.
I think it's far-fetched to think that they would drink Coors Light, but besides that, the concept itself, like, no.
The concept itself of like trash from our own planet getting out and floating and just landing there or something like that, right? Because how many times have you been like, you're hiking in the woods somewhere like way the hell out in the mountains, and you're like, where did this come from? Like, it's like you found a Hot Pocket package and you're like, who's got a microwave out here? And
yeah, what you would have had to microwave that, drive 60 miles, then eat it, and it's just like.
Has that ever happened to you when you like?
No, I've had that experience.
Why is this here?
Off my head, I don't know, like, but like somewhere where you find like a rubber duck, and you're just like,
who's taking a bath? Who's yeah. So I and then sort of beyond that, in seriousness, and space and time is like a whole nother construct. And Mandy, my wife, brought that up too. She has a lot of great ideas. She was bringing up some stuff about like how time is different, like on Interstellar, right? You've seen Interstellar. I don't know if we had that conversation.
Oh yeah.
about, how they go onto the one planet and the gravitational force is very, very different than where they are on their ship. And they leave and they're gone for like 2 hours and they come back and it's been like 25 years. And the guy's like old and he had stuck around, like cried, like he put himself to sleep for a long time. But that concept is really crazy too, just relativity and time and how crazy that concept is. But so you mesh that with space and getting from one edge of space to the next. And, and then like at the end of the movie, when he comes back and his daughter is like in her 90s or whatever, and he's still the same age when he left. That's crazy. That stuff is like mind-boggling.
And we were talking about this a little bit, but like not maybe, like obviously we don't know what we're talking about with this, but we're talking about like how it's like gravity is one of the things that affects like the movement of time for a person. So if you're in an area of higher gravity, time goes through you faster than if you're in a lower gravity area. To my understanding. And then we were talking about like how like in the movie they're on a planet with such high gravity, but like that like they like weren't crushed by it, but for them it was an hour and for the other guy it was 25 years, but somehow they were able to walk around like normal on this planet. And like I think they need to rewatch it and like maybe they talk about that or something, or there's no explanation, but like that doesn't make any sense, right?
They didn't talk about that. It was just they weren't crushed, they weren't bouncing around. It was like there was no difference in the gravity. It was really really odd to think about. How that and I feel like the rest of the movie they did a pretty good job of things like explosions didn't have sound in space, which is another thing because there's no space is a vacuum, so you wouldn't actually hear, there wouldn't actually be flames, those kinds of things, because there's no oxygen, so it's not like you're going to see a flame. That kind of stuff is also really interesting to think about too, is what would things that exist in our physical reality, what would they be like on another planet? Like if you were to start a fire on Mars, what would it look like?
I wonder if like planets with like very low levels of oxygen would like think about it, there's planets that have fires never existed on them.
Right.
And that's weird to me. Because like, like we think of like all those things like, earth, air, fire, and water are like these like fundamental things. But then like there are planets where there's never been any fire or water. So it's like,
Yeah, and there's planets that are so far away from the sun and they're so cold that you couldn't actually have a fire. Like you physically you couldn't actually have a fire, right? There'd be no way to get anything hot enough that it would cancel out how cold the planet is. It's like there's planets that are the opposite, or areas in space that are the opposite of what the sun is, right? Or a star is.
Yeah, it's so like that's such a weird thing to think about to me. But one thing that brings me comfort, and this is I think a great time, is our unofficial sponsor of the day.
Of course, it brings me comfort as well. I'm excited for you to talk about this.
And I think this should be a recurring segment where we each pick an unofficial sponsor of the day. But
I love it.
The unofficial sponsor of the day is the Arby's Meat Mountain Sandwich.
You've been waiting all day to talk about this.
Thank you, Joey. But so anyone who doesn't know, the Arby's Meat Mountain Sandwich is 2 chicken tenders, roast turkey, pit smoked ham, corned beef, smoked brisket, Angus steak, roast beef, and pepper bacon with cheddar and Swiss cheese.
Oh, yes. Please. I know you joke about Arby's all the time, and that looks deal. I will eat that at some point. We will take a trip to Arby's, and we
better hurry, because like God knows how long that's gonna last. Like I don't mean in terms of like selling out. Like they're probably gonna have it for a week and be like, all right, like haha,
yeah,
got them.
We may have to. Like, isn't there an Arby's close to the hospital. So we need to be close.
I know I have an Arby's in mind, but also in what other country, or I guess with the theme of the episode, on what other planet could you make a sandwich like that, pitch it to a boardroom full of like rich people and be like, and they're all just like, oh.
Yeah, there you go. All the meats. Yeah.
In what other reality is that possible? I think just this one. That's great. That's why they're our unofficial sponsor of the day.
Oh, the gluttony of the United States of America.
Oh, Arby's.
Arby's.
I'd like to meet Arby one day.
I actually don't. I am now. I want to know where Arby person. I don't.
Who's Arby?
Who is Arby? And who names their kid Arby?
Must be a Southern thing. I imagine it's Southern thing because of the cowboy hat.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeehaw.
I think that's a good place to end with the sponsor of tonight's episode.
The original space cowboy, Arby.
Okay, so I think we said, right, we just need 3 likes. You get us 3 likes, we'll do another idioms episode. I think the fans deserve it, so please give us 3 likes, and we'll go ahead and pop up another idioms episode. That was one that we'll actually study for a little bit. Usually most of these episodes, it's banter. We like to just chat. This is what we do every day anyway. We just happen to have a show now.
Yeah, now it's our job.
Now it's our job. So
and idioms could leak also into like that will always leak into like riddles or just random fun facts and things like that. So like, why would you not want to hear more of that?
Of course. I want to hear more. All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been another episode of Banter. I'm Old.
And I'm Bald.
We'll see you next week.